Welcome back to I've Got Something to Tell You with Colleen. Taylor is out of town this week, so it is a Colleen only episode. So you're going to get a high dose of true crime this week. And then next week we'll be back with Taylor and my stories. So you'll get your double dose of true crime and paranormal. But we're going to get right into it. So this week I've got a story that is an absolute wild one, and it is the Chowchilla bus kidnapping. If you know this one, you know it's insane, and let's just get started. So this starts July 15th, 1976 in Chowchilla, California. This is Central California, middle of nowhere, farming town, and it is hot as hell in the summer. This is the kind of place where people get really excited about a new tractor or some new gossip that is around the town. It's very small. But so that afternoon on July 15th, a yellow school bus is loading up with 26 kids. These kids are anywhere from the age of 5 to 14 years old, and they're heading home after a summer school field trip at the pool. So behind the wheel of this yellow school bus is Ed Ray, who's 55 years old, and he has been the Dairyland Elementary School bus driver for over 20 years. He knows everybody in town, and he knows all the roads. He's a very beloved local. So Ed takes off with the kids in the bus, and he's going to take them home. And as he takes a turn down a road, there is a white van parked across the road, completely blocking the way. Now, because it's Chowchilla, it's a small town, everybody knows everybody, Ed doesn't think twice about pulling up to the van to open the bus door to see if he can help them. Immediate regret, because 3 men get out of the van with their faces covered in nylon stockings, very bank robber style, and they are holding sawed-off shotguns. Now, this is a nightmare, but this is just the beginning. The 3 men climb aboard and everything shifts instantly. The kids go from giggling to absolutely dead silence. The first man shoves a shotgun towards Ed Ray and forces him out of the driver's seat. They push him down the aisle past rows of the kids, clutching their towels and each other in absolute fear. The second man slides behind the wheel of the school bus and takes off. And the third man actually gets back in the van and starts following the bus. So these guys definitely had a plan. The kids do not know it yet, but they have just been swallowed into one of the strangest kidnapping plots in U.S. history. So this bus is driving completely off course, farther and farther outside of town. Eventually, they pull into a dry riverbed with trees that are super tall. So the plan is to hide this bus in the riverbed because the trees are tall enough to keep it totally hidden. That's where the kidnappers order everyone off. Ed and the kids are at gunpoint and told to jump from the back of the bus into 2 vans that are sitting in this riverbed. So basically what they do is they open the back of the door of the bus, and the vans back are open, and they are ordering the kids to jump from the back of the bus into the vans because they don't want any footprints leaving the bus into the vans. Once inside the vans, these have definitely been modified for this heist. The windows are painted over black, and the interiors are lined with plywood, so you can't see anything outside. It is complete sensory deprivation. So once the doors are slammed shut, it's total darkness. And again, this is middle of July in California, so the heat inside is building up almost instantly. There's no ventilation, and the kids are packed shoulder to shoulder. It's completely suffocating. Then the van starts moving, and the kidnappers are deliberately circling, doubling back, trying to confuse Ed and the kids so they wouldn't be able to guess where they were being taken. This goes on for 11 hours. They are driving around, circling, doubling back, taking U-turns, doing whatever. But this is 11 hours. They are suffocating in darkness. It is basically a rolling oven because of how hot it is getting in those cars. Every time they stop, there's like this tense silence within the vans because they're hoping that they're finally where they need to go just so that they can get out of the back of these cars. But every time they stop, they just keep going. The kids are crying. They're terrified. Some are actually getting sick from the heat and the motion of driving because, again, there are no windows. So they're just getting jostled around in the back of these cars. By the time the vans finally get to the location that they're taking these kids and Ed to, it's 3 a.m. Nearly 12 hours have passed since the hijacking. Kids are exhausted, dehydrated, and disoriented. They do not even know if they are in California anymore. So the kidnappers open the back of the van and they pull Ed out first. Then they slam the doors immediately behind. They continue to come back one by one, grabbing the closest kid to the door and slamming each time. So the kids have no idea what is happening. They're just grabbing kids, but they don't know what's happening once they close the door. Anything could be going on out there. Now, what actually is happening is probably equally as scary as what they could have imagined. They're being brought one by one to a ladder that is going to a hole in the ground. So they're being led to this ladder that is basically leading them underground. And once down the ladder, they realize they are inside the back of a truck, like a moving truck, that is buried underground and has been converted into a kind of makeshift underground prison. Guys, this is terrifying. This true crime. This is a true crime. There are a few mattresses on the floor of this makeshift prison. There are also some small crates of food. They have bread, cereal, peanut butter, and a few jugs of water. There's also a bucket that has been cut into the wheel well for a toilet. And there are 2 ventilation pipes with fans sticking up to the surface, but that is it. So 26 children and 1 adult are crammed into a space that's about 8 feet wide and 16 feet long. It's crammed and it's getting, well, you guessed it, hot. So the kidnappers pull the ladder back out, they slam the hatch shut, and they weigh it down with 2 massive industrial batteries and this sheet of steel that's almost like a manhole cover before they start shoveling dirt on top. So the kids are in this tomb, and all they can hear is dirt being shoveled on top of them. What's scarier than the sound of them shoveling the dirt to further bury the truck? The silence when it stops, because they realize they are buried alive. The food and water they've been left is barely enough for a day, and the air is stale and heavy. The heat inside is just raising to immeasurable numbers almost immediately. And now remember, these kids are young as 5 years old, and they are freaking out. And Ed Ray, the steady hand everyone trusted to get them home, is now faced with the impossible. He has to keep 26 terrified children calm while sealed alive underground. So while Ed and the kids are trapped underground, let's talk about what's happening above ground. This is 1976. This is an era where kids are outside until the streetlights come on. Parents aren't glued to their kids every second. There's no phones. There's no tracking devices on phones because they don't have it yet. And it's summer. Kids don't show up right on time. They're out playing with their friends. So when these summer camp kids don't show up right on the dot, parents aren't panicking at first. But then it starts to get later and the sun drops lower and parents are standing out on their porches, scanning the road, expecting to see their kids running home to beat the absolute darkness, but no one comes home. Phone calls start to go around between the parents is your kid home yet? And they start realizing that all the kids who are on the bus for summer camp haven't gotten home yet. So by early evening, and just so everyone is aware, it's about 2 hours after the kids should have been home, the sheriff's office is getting flooded with calls. Parents are frantic. 26 kids, and I'm repeating this. These kids are 5 years old to 14 years old, are unaccounted for. And so is Ed Ray, the most reliable man in the whole damn town. Parents start going out to retrace the bus route just in case it broke down or there are any signs of what happened, but there's nothing. So the police get involved and they decide to do an air search, and that's when they see it. They see the school bus abandoned in a dry riverbed, hidden under branches. When they go in to investigate, the windows are open, the kids' belongings are still inside, but there's no driver and no children. The police don't know what happened, but they know this is a mass disappearance and they can see tire tracks of the vans on the ground. So they're putting 2 and 2 together that the kids were moved to a different vehicle and are on the move. So the sheriff at the time makes this awesome call. He calls the governor, and the governor immediately gets the FBI involved, which, again, right move, because this isn't just a missing kid case anymore. This is the largest child abduction in U.S. history. Within hours, 30 FBI agents are on the ground in Chowchilla. Roadblocks go up on every highway out of town. They start combing orchards, farmhouses, reservoirs, basically anywhere that they think that these kids could be hidden or being held. So while the FBI is searching every inch of the Central Valley, word is getting out fast. Reporters descend on Chowchilla, TV trucks roll in, headlines are screaming, 26 children vanish with the bus driver. This actually becomes national news, even getting the attention of Walter Cronkite, who reports on it that evening. So the weird thing is that even though this is deemed the largest kidnapping, there is no communication or demand from the kidnappers. So the police, again, are just like, what is going on? Because normally there would be some sort of ransom or some sort of demand in exchange for the kids. Now, again, while this is all going on, Ed and the kids are still buried underground, and things are getting worse really fast for them. They are running out of food. They only have a little bit of water left, and the fans that were running the ventilation pipes have stopped. The walls of the truck are groaning under the dirt, and every so often, more dirt sprinkles in from the ceiling. That's when they realize that the truck might be giving in to the weight of the dirt and that it's just a matter of time before it collapses. Ed Ray knows that he has to keep order, and hoping to keep the kids calm, he's trying to come up with a plan. So he organizes the older boys and he has them comfort the little ones. He has them pass water around in turns, just trying to keep order and keep things as steady as possible. He'll never admit it, but Ed is running out of reassurance himself. So by this point, it's been nearly a full day since they were hijacked. That's when Ed and 14-year-old Michael Marshall have this communal understanding. Nobody's coming back for them. If they don't try and get out, they're going to die down there. So they look up at the hatch and it's covered with steel, weighted with batteries, buried under dirt. It looks impossible, but it's their only way out. They're trying to come up with a plan, and the first problem they face is that the hatch is too high to reach. So they drag over the mattresses that the kidnappers had left and start stacking them up. They put them one on top of the other until the pile is just high enough for Michael Marshall to climb to the top. He pushes at the cover, but it doesn't budge. Remember, it's not just a lid. This is a steel plate weighed down by 2 truck batteries, which are easily close to hundreds of pounds. So they try again, now with 2 boys. They're shoving with everything they have, but nothing happens. Hours pass like this. The boys going up and down the mattress stack, they're pushing, straining, and then they're climbing back down, drenched in sweat with dirt in their eyes and their mouths. The air inside the truck is getting worse. younger kids are crying, and now the side of the truck is slightly bowed because it's continuing to give in to the weight above. Finally, Michael takes a piece of wood and wedges it between the seam of the cover, and using his whole body weight, he leverages the plate to budge just slightly, but it's enough. It isn't freedom yet because remember, they are buried, and above that hatch is still 12 feet of dirt. So they have to start digging. They take turns clawing at the soil, pulling it down into the truck, trying to scoop it away with their bare hands. But every scoop they drag inside just gets replaced by more dirt collapsing back into the gap. So it's like every time they pull dirt, it just is filling back up again. So this feels endless and probably hopeless. For nearly 4 hours, they are digging. Their fingernails tear, their hands blister, their eyes are stinging with dirt. But slowly, they get one battery to push aside. Then they get the other one, and the steel plate shifts enough that the opening is there. Just 2 feet, but it's enough for a crawl space. Michael doesn't hesitate. He is 14 years old, and he forces himself up through that hole, clawing through the dirt until his head bursts into the daylight. Now, he is 14 years old and super brave because who knows what is waiting for him at the surface? There could be people out there. The kidnappers could still be out there. Like, he has no idea. So he looks around and the area is empty. There are no guards. The kidnappers aren't there. It's just silence and the hot summer air. He yells back down to everyone back in the truck and that it's safe. So one by one, the kids scramble up that mattress tower. They squeeze through the narrow opening and they pull themselves out. Ed is the last one to leave. He waits until the very end. He won't leave until he knows every last child has made it to the surface. Only then does he climb out. It's 8 p.m. on July 16th when they finally reach the surface. They had been missing for 36 hours, and 16 of those hours were spent buried alive underground. So they're looking around in this rock quarry, and they can hear these machine noises. So Ed and the kids start going towards the sound. They walk up on these quarry workers, which you could imagine probably the workers' faces. And Ed says, "We're from Chowchilla. We've been missing." The workers call it in immediately because the story has been everywhere. And within minutes, law enforcement knows the Chowchilla kids have been found and they are alive. FBI agents and police rush to the quarry. Ed and the kids are loaded up quickly into a bus, which, traumatic. And they are taken to the Santa Rita jail in Livermore, which sounds strange, but this was the closest secure place to process them, get them water and food, and also get the medical checks that the kids and Ed needed. And this is amazing because besides some bruises and dehydration, everyone's actually in good health. After 4 hours of questions, they are released and brought back to Chowchilla, unfortunately in a bus. Guys, have some sympathy. These kids were traumatized. So they're brought back to Chowchilla and they are reunited with their families, and the reunions are chaos in the best possible way. Parents who had been bracing for the worst suddenly have their children back, and the gym at Dairyland Elementary is turned into this celebratory moment of everybody reuniting. And people are sobbing and clinging to each other. The kids are still dazed and covered in dirt, but they are alive. One reporter who was there said it was like watching children walk back from the grave. And Ed, he is treated like the hero that he is. The kids will not leave his side. Parents are hugging him. He had been the anchor in that underground tomb, and now he had brought all of the kids home. But as the town is celebrating, the FBI is FBIing and looking into this quarry and the buried moving truck to put together who did this to these kids. So they go back to the quarry, and right away they clock that the quarry itself belonged to the Woods family, one of the wealthiest families in the area, which this is huge because think about it. Whoever planned this had to have access to the land at the quarry. They had to have heavy equipment because it's not easy to bury a truck, a moving truck. And they also had to have resources, money, to pull this all off. So FBI goes into the moving truck and they find more clues. They find wrappers, tools, handwritten notes. The kidnappers had actually jotted down drafts of how to write their ransom notes. And because they never expected the kids to escape or the truck to be found, they didn't bother picking up this trash. So, as part of their ransom, they were planning to demand $5 million from the state of California, delivered in exchange for the kids. Except here's the thing. Remember that they never got any calls for ransom or for an exchange or any demands. They never got any notes or anything. It's because the kidnappers couldn't get through. The Chowchilla Sheriff's Office phone lines were so jammed with reporters and panicked parents, they actually couldn't make the ransom call. So their master plan fell apart before it even got off the ground. So FBI, between the quarry connection and the money resources needed to pull off burying the truck, and now the evidence inside the truck, it doesn't take long for investigators to zero in on suspects. First up is Frederick Woods, son of the Woods family that owned the quarry and known to hang around with two brothers from a nearby well-off family, James and Richard Schoenfield. Now, that might feel like a bit of a jump, immediately just zeroing in on the son. But these idiots didn't just leave their ransom note drafts behind. Frederick Woods' name was on one of those slips of paper found inside the truck. And with all 26 witnesses saying that there were 3 kidnappers, it was easy to connect Frederick with the 2 brothers since they were also very much known around town to be very close. It continues to get even stranger. When they go to arrest these guys, they are gone. The FBI raids the Woods estate looking for them. And this is a mansion in Portola Valley. So it's loaded with toys that like you'd expect of a rich kid. Sports cars, motorcycles, and a stash of evidence. In the garage, they find detailed diagrams of the kidnapping, down to the layout of the truck buried underground. They also find more drafts of the ransom notes, the guns used in the kidnapping, and even evidence that these guys had been watching movies like Dirty Harry for inspiration. I also read somewhere that the whole plan that they wrote out, like step 1, step 2, it was just a piece of paper that just said the plan in all caps at the very top. So these guys were criminal masterminds. So meanwhile, the Schoenfield brothers are on the run and they are hiding out for about a week. They bounce around California, hiding out in different areas, trying to lay low, but it doesn't last. One by one, they get caught by the police and arrested. Woods lasts a little bit longer. He skips town and tries to take off to Canada, but he's arrested at the border. And he gets arrested about a week after the Schoenfield brothers. So within 2 weeks of the buried escape, all 3 men are in custody. Now, why did these guys do it? All three of the men, despite being from wealthy families, owed massive debt, and they said they needed multiple victims in order to get millions. They chose children because they didn't fight back and figured the state would be more willing to pay for them. Scumbags. By 1977, this case goes to court. The charges are enormous. There are 27 counts of kidnapping for ransom with bodily harm, one for each child plus Ed Ray. Both Ed and several of the kids testified against their kidnappers. Now, under California law at the time, kidnapping with bodily harm carried a mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. So prosecutors didn't have to prove murder. The mere fact that those kids had been buried alive in that sweltering truck, deprived of food and water, was enough to qualify as bodily harm. So bodily harm could be defined as like literally bodily physical harm, but they were saying that the conditions that they were kept in constituted enough. The defense tried to argue that since no one was actually physically injured, the men should be eligible for parole, but the jury wasn't having it. All three men, Woods and the Schoenfield brothers, were convicted. The judge handed down life sentences to all three. This is where Taylor celebrates and gets very excited. She wants to know if they're alive. Sorry, Taylor, and everybody else, I'm about to really burst your bubble here. They were sentenced to life without parole for kidnapping and bodily harm. But the courts changed the sentencing for kidnapping with bodily harm that now it qualifies for life with the possibility of parole. So now this opens up the door for these guys to get parole hearings, and boy, do they take advantage of that. So they start having parole hearings, and survivors of the kidnapping show up to parole hearings for decades to beg the board not to release these men. Many of them said the ordeal never left them. They had nightmares, panic attacks, lifelong claustrophobia, and some described still sleeping with the lights on, afraid of the dark even after 40 years. Sorry guys, but Richard Schoenfield was the first to walk. After multiple appeals and parole hearings, he was released in 2012 after serving 36 years. James Schoenfield followed 3 years later in 2015 after serving nearly 40 years. Frederick Woods, the so-called mastermind, he fought the longest, but he stayed behind bars until 2022, 46 years after the kidnapping, and he was finally granted parole at the age of 70. Here's the other part that is infuriating. Behind bars, Woods lived with wealth and privilege. He inherited millions while serving time, he owned property, and he even ran businesses from prison. Meanwhile, the victims he buried alive were living with lifelong trauma. So yeah, today, all three men are free. Now, I always try and find a silver lining. So, despite the trauma and the fact that now their kidnappers are out free, this does not stop the survivors from continuing to band together. Every year on July 15th, the anniversary of the bus hijacking, many of those survivors gather together in Chowchilla. They honor their resilience, they honor what they endured as children, and they honor Ed Ray, the bus driver who never left their side, who kept them calm, and who helped them survive. Ed passed away in 2012, but his legacy is there every summer when those now grown children come back together. It's a reminder that in one of the strangest and darkest kidnapping plots in U.S. history, it wasn't the ransom or the crime that lasted. It was the survival. So yeah, that is the Chowchilla bus kidnapping. It is dark and twisted, and yeah, I hope you guys can recover from that one. Well, thank you again so much for listening, and Taylor and I will be back with our regularly scheduled programming next week with both the mix of the true crime and the paranormal. If you guys have a story to tell us, you can email us at igsttystories@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok at igsttypod. And yeah, we just want to hear from you guys. We read the comments, we read the DMs, so reach out. And again, thanks for listening. Later.